When you think of cruise ship disasters, your first thought's most likely the 1912 sinking of the Titanic. But there's a cruise ship disaster that happened less than a decade ago, which everyone seems to have forgotten. A cruise ship disaster so deadly, the fatality rate was 97.36%. Comparatively, the Titanic had a fatality rate of only 67%. In fact, this incident stands as the most fatal cruise ship disaster in modern history. So that begs the question, why does nobody talk about it? It was the spring of 2015, and the Dongfang Zhi Xing cruise ship, also known as the Eastern Star cruise ship, was poised to embark on what would have been a scenic cruise from Nanjing to the Chongqing region. The vessel weighed over 2,000 tons and measured to 76 meters in length, holding up to 534 passengers. However, this particular voyage only reported 456 passengers on board. These passengers were set to navigate the vast and historic waters of China's Yangtze River, which is the largest river in all of Asia, stretching 6,300 kilometers. This river made the perfect vacation spot for Chinese residents due to its scenery and weather. With multiple decks, the ship offered amenities typical to any cruise line like bars, fitness centers, beauty salons, and spas. This river cruise promised passengers a journey of relaxation through one of the country's most breathtaking rivers. Unfortunately, the term breathtaking would soon take on a tragically literal meaning. During one of the first nights of the trek to Chongqing, there was a severe weather warning issued by the Chongqing Weather Administration, advising all ships to avoid sailing due to a terrible storm that was brewing in the area. They would air this warning not once, not twice, but 7 separate times, informing all captains and crew to stay clear of the waters overnight. While other river cruises and smaller vessels in the area made for port as advised by the Weather Administration, the Eastern Star did not. To this day, it's still unclear if the captains of the Eastern Star ever received such reports, as the captain and chief engineer swear to have never received the alerts despite every other vessel in the area clearly receiving them. This catastrophic mistake by the captain or a minor miscommunication by the administration would cost the lives of over 442 passengers who had no idea what was coming. At around 9:28 p.m., the Eastern Star would be hit by a massive gust of wind, which was a downburst from a nearby thunderstorm. A downburst is a powerful downward air current causing strong winds upon reaching the ground. It results from cooled air descending rapidly and spreading outwards in all directions, causing similar damage to that of a tornado. The winds of this specific downburst, which hit the Eastern Star, clocked in at 63 knots or 118 kilometers per hour, striking the side of the tall but very thin vessel, causing it to rotate backwards. In the matter of seconds, the ship quickly turned around 180 degrees, causing violent shakes which throttled the ship upside down. The strong gust of wind came in so fast that only a handful of crew and passengers had enough time to abandon ship and swim ashore. In total, only 9 people were able to jump off the ship, while the remaining 449 passengers and crew were stuck upside down in their cabin rooms, while water started to flood inside. Majority of the passengers were asleep when the ship sunk, but would have quickly awoken after the fast release of water filled each of their cabins. Thankfully, the 9 people who jumped ship were able to swim ashore in a short amount of time, as the location of the boat wasn't too far from land. But unfortunately, due to the Yangtze River's remote location, it would nearly take 3 hours before any help would arrive. By this time, most of the passengers on board the Eastern Star would have drowned. However, there were still many alive, only they were trapped. This was because of tiny air bubbles that formed inside a select amount of passengers' cabins that allowed them to breathe whilst the rest of the boat was still underwater. These air bubbles don't last forever though, and it was crucial that the first responders acted as soon as possible, which unfortunately wasn't the case in this tragic event, as it took over 12 hours before a true rescue effort was in full effect. This was due to the terrible weather, the remote location, and overall incompetence of the rescue managers for being underprepared. When rescuers first arrived, they stated they could hear screaming and pounding within the overturned hull, a noise that would haunt them for the rest of their lives.
I swam back and forth 3 times, and by the 3rd time I felt somebody was there above me. As soon as I got out of the water, I noticed the trapped victim. It was pitch dark with just him inside the cabin and nobody else.
The hull of the capsized passenger ship is exposed. Rescuers tapped on the hull with hammers, and a local newspaper reports they heard responses from inside.
The rescue team went along the bottom side of the ship, which was now flipped upside down, and banged a hammer so survivors on the other side could respond. If they heard a scream or a cry for help, they would immediately start cutting holes in the underside of the vessel. At first, this was a successful method in rescuing 3 survivors trapped in air pockets, but this would be the only positive in their rescuing efforts. As night turned to day, 3,000 rescue workers came into this remote river in China to help search for remaining passengers, but they'd unfortunately only find lifeless bodies with each room they scavenged. Although the ship hadn't sunk to the bottom of the river, rescue efforts were still incredibly difficult, as the murky waters from the terrible night before made visibility an all-time low. The inside of the sunken Eastern Star was pitch black, and the rooms were very condensed, which made navigating for survivors incredibly difficult. After many days of hard work, the rescue mission was a complete failure, as they had learned the sad reality that the vast majority of people never survived past the first couple minutes of the ship sinking. On the 7th of June, the rescue mission turned into a recovery mission, as they inverted the ship and lifted it out of the water. In total, they were only able to rescue 3 passengers, not including the 9 that previously jumped ship. Of the 12 passengers who survived, the captain was one of them. I guess it's not always true that a captain goes down with his ship. The Chinese government declared a period of mourning, as all rescuers on site performed a moment of silence in memory of the 442 individuals that perished aboard the Eastern Star. The captain of the ship, along with the chief of engineering, were taken into custody and charged along with 48 other people in the mismanagement that led to the most fatal cruise ship disaster in modern history. It's weird to think that a cruise ship disaster more fatal than the Titanic is widely forgotten amongst those in Europe and in North America. It's obvious that China is known for concealing their national tragedies, and this one is no different, because when doing research on this disaster, it was almost impossible to find even basic information like the name of the captain aboard the Eastern Star. And this is much different when comparing to another ship disaster like the Titanic, which is one of the most documented tragedies of all time. The Titanic has feature films, museums, and books, while the Eastern Star has a few news clips, a Wikipedia, and hopefully now this video to remember it. If you enjoyed this small documentary, consider subscribing, and I'll see you on our next voyage.